My name is Abel Blackwood. I'm the town's effigy maker, a craft passed down from my great-grandfather. The people in the hollow say my effigies have a spark of life in them, that their faces are so real they look like they could step right out of the paper. Only I know where that spark comes from. It's born from our family's oldest secret, that the eyes and the dead walk again. That's why every effigy I make, no matter how detailed, always has those two blank, white circles where the pupils should be. It's a path for the dead to move on, and a protection for the living to stay safe. When they brought Ellie Vance's body back to the hollow, a cold rain was falling. She just turned 19. A kid just starting her life, snuffed out with a bottle of poison from the hardware store. Her brother, Ethan, knelt in the funeral home, his eyes so red they looked like they were bleeding. I brought my son, Caleb, with me to help. Looking at the black and white photo of Ellie on the memorial stand, my chest felt tight. She was such a good kid, always quiet, always polite, with a sweet smile for everyone she met. She'd been the first in a generation from the Hollow to get a full ride to the state university, our town's shining star. And now, this. Mr. Blackwood. Ethan's voice was a dry rasp. Her effigy. I'd be grateful. I nodded, putting a hand on his shoulder. I'm so sorry for your loss, son. Don't you worry. I'll make her the most beautiful one I've ever made. Ethan didn't say anything. He just stared at the photograph, his fists clenched so tight his knuckles were white. Caleb and I went back to my workshop, and I worked through the night. I bent bamboo strips for the skeleton, stretched white paper for the skin, and cut colored sheets for her dress and hair. Following Ethan's description, I dressed the effigy in a little floral sundress she'd loved and gave it the same long braid she always wore. When I was done, a lifelike paper girl stood there, almost identical to the girl in the picture, except for her eyes. They were empty, hollow voids. The next day, I had Caleb deliver the effigy to the funeral home. He came running back, not 20 minutes later, his face a mask of panic. Dad, it's bad. Ethan's going to paint in the eyes. A cold dread washed over me. I grabbed my toolkit and ran. Ethan, of all people, knew the rules of Blackwood Hollow. What was he thinking? When I burst into the viewing room, he was standing before the effigy with a small bowl of dark red liquid and a brand new paintbrush. In the bowl was a mixture of ink and the blood dripping from his own fingertip. Ethan, stop, I yelled. He turned to look at me, and in his bloodshot eyes, I saw a terrifying, burning hatred. Mr. Blackwood, stay out of this. Are you insane? If you do that, she can't move on, and you move on. He gave a bitter, broken laugh as a tear rolled down his cheek. That's the last thing I want. I want her to go back. Go back and take every last one of those monsters who did this to her. Caleb, who had followed me in, was shaking. Ethan, man, please don't do this. An effigy with its eyes filled and will walk back from the flames to settle its debts. Settle its debts? Good. Without another moment of hesitation, Ethan dipped the brush into the bloody ink. The tip landed precisely in the center of the effigy's blank right eye. With a steady hand, he painted a perfectly round, chillingly dark pupil. Then he did the left. The moment the second I was complete, a cold gust of wind swirled through the room, sending memorial cards and dried flowers scattering across the floor. The effigy's head, which had been tilted slightly downward, seemed to twitch, and its newly painted eyes, black and bottomless, seemed to be staring right at us. Ethan dropped the brush. He spoke to the effigy in a low whisper. Ellie, I'm sorry. I couldn't protect you, but I'm giving you your eyes back. Now you go. You go and get the justice you deserve. As he finished speaking, his own eyes rolled back in his head, and he collapsed onto the floor. 2. Ethan had only fainted from exhaustion and blood loss. He was fine physically, but I knew this was far from over. I had Caleb help him to a chair in the hall while I stayed in the viewing room, my eyes locked on the paper doll. It stood perfectly still, as if nothing had happened, but the hairs on the back of my neck were standing on end. I could feel it. There was another set of eyes in this room now. Eyes from the other side. Ellie's funeral was held 2 days later. Ethan was eerily silent through the whole thing, just going through the motions of burying his little sister. The effigy with the painted eyes was burned at the graveside, as is our custom. As the flames shot up, consuming the paper doll's delicate face, I could have sworn I saw 2 red tears trickle from those blood-painted eyes. The townspeople thought that was the end of it. They offered Ethan their condolences, repeating the same tired phrases about how the dead can't come back. Only I knew that for some people, this was just the beginning. That very night, the first scream echoed through the hollow. It came from the widow Hobbs's place on the east side of town, a sound so shrill it cut through the night's quiet. By the time we got there, her daughter, Laura, was lying dead in the yard. The way she died was bizarre. Her eyes were wide with terror, her mouth stretched open. Her throat was stuffed with wads of yellowed paper, the same kind I used for the effigies, packed so tightly they'd choke the life out of her. The medical examiner later ruled it asphyxiation, but had no explanation for how the paper got there. Fear spread through the town like a sickness. People started whispering that Ellie's ghost had come back for revenge. Caleb was so scared he couldn't sleep alone. "Dad," he kept asking, "was it the effigy?" I didn't answer, just lit another cigarette. I went over to Ethan's house. He was sitting alone in the dark. When I told him about Laura Hobbs, he showed no reaction at all. He just asked calmly, "Mr. Blackwood, who do you think is next?" My blood ran cold. Laura Hobbs. She was the one who had started the rumors on Twitter, claiming Ellie was sleeping with a professor for grades. When the lies got back to the Hollow, the gossip nearly destroyed Ellie's parents. It was the final straw for Ellie. "Ethan, you have to stop this," I said, my voice low. "If this continues, things are going to get much, much worse. Stop this." He laughed, a sound full of grief. "Every person who killed my sister is going to pay. This isn't me doing this, Mr. Blackwood. This is Ellie." I had no reply. I could stop Ethan, but how could I stop the vengeful will of a girl who had been wronged so terribly? The next day, it happened again. This time it was Kevin Price, a local burnout. They found his body in the creek at the edge of town. When they pulled him out, his skin was pale and bloated. But the horrifying part was his hands. All 10 of his fingers had been snapped, twisted back at unnatural angles until the bones broke through the skin. Kevin Price was the one who had taken Laura's rumors and run with them. He'd photoshopped Ellie's face onto pornographic images and spread them all over Reddit. He used his hands to drag Ellie into hell. Now, his hands were destroyed, and he was dead. Blackwood Hollow descended into chaos. A death a day, each one linked to Ellie Vance. Panic became a plague. Anyone who had ever said a bad word about Ellie, or even just liked a hateful post online, was now terrified, barricading themselves in their homes. Some of them went to Ethan's house, kneeling on his lawn, begging for forgiveness. Through the closed door, Ethan's cold voice replied, "Don't tell me. Tell my sister." So they scrambled to the cemetery, crying and praying at Ellie's grave, knocking their heads on the cold ground. It didn't help. On the third night, another one died. A young man named Marcus Bell, one of Kevin's friends. He had been the one who threatened to dox Ellie online, to make her life a living hell in the real world too. They found him in his own home, hanging from a ceiling beam by a rope. His tongue had been cut out at the root. 3 bodies in 3 days brought the state police. Squad cars rolled into our quiet mountain town, and detectives started going door to door. They marked Ethan as their prime suspect and took him in for questioning. But they couldn't find a thing. For each of the murders, Ethan had a rock-solid alibi. He was either at home alone or sitting in my workshop with me, lost in a shared, heavy silence. The police were stumped. They classified the deaths as a series of bizarre, ritualistic homicides. They didn't believe in ghosts, so they couldn't see the connection staring them in the face. But we did. Everyone in the Hollow knew the truth. Ellie had come back to get her revenge. That paper doll, the one with the blood-painted eyes, had come to life. It was repaying the tormentors in kind, using the very methods they had used to destroy her. The rumor-monger, choked on paper. The photo editor, his hands broken. The doxxer, his tongue silenced. A perfect, terrible symmetry. After 48 hours, the police released Ethan due to lack of evidence. He looked gaunt, but also calmer, as if a great weight was slowly lifting. The first thing he did was come to my workshop. "Mr. Blackwood," he said, handing me a slip of paper, "I need you to make one more thing for me." I took the paper. It had a single name on it, Ashley Thorne. My breath caught in my throat. I'd heard Ethan say that name before. She was Ellie's college roommate and the architect of the entire cyberbullying campaign. She had been jealous of Ellie for winning a scholarship and getting the attention of a popular senior athlete. So she decided to destroy her. She was the source. The other three were just her willing accomplices. Ethan, this is enough, I said, my voice trembling. Ashley is in the city, hundreds of miles from here. Ellie can't. She'll get there. Ethan interrupted, his voice flat and certain. No matter how far, she'll get there. His gaze was terrifyingly resolute. She's the last one, Mr. Blackwood. Once she's gone, Ellie's anger will be gone too. I looked at him, at the profound, unending grief in his eyes. I finally let out a long sigh and took the paper from his hand. I didn't know if I was doing the right thing. I had followed the rules my entire life, and now I was breaking them for a boy who wasn't even family. Maybe it was because I'd watched Ellie grow up and couldn't stand the injustice of it all. Or maybe it was because, in Ethan's burning eyes, I saw a reflection of a desire I barely admitted to myself. The desire for true justice. I spent the entire day crafting a life-sized effigy of Ashley Thorne. This time, I left the face completely blank. No nose, no mouth, no eyebrows. A featureless white oval, which was somehow more terrifying than any expression I could have painted. When Ethan came to collect it, he pricked his finger again and let a single drop of blood fall onto the center of the doll's forehead. The crimson bead soaked into the paper and vanished without a trace. 4. News of Ashley Thorne's death came a week later. It was a small story buried in the metro section of the state newspaper. University student found dead in dorm room. Cause undetermined. No photo, just a few short paragraphs. But I knew it was her. Caleb found the real story online. The university's subreddit was on fire. Some said it was a sudden aneurysm. Others said she'd fallen out of her top bunk in her sleep and broken her neck. But one anonymous post, claiming to be from her roommate, told a different story. The post said that in the days leading up to her death, Ashley had become paranoid and unstable. She kept telling people there was a fourth person in their 3-person dorm room, a girl in a floral sundress who would stand by her bed at night and just stare at her. She said she was having nightmares every night about Ellie, seeing her crawl out of a river, dripping wet, asking over and over, why? Why did you do this to me? Ashley had taped crosses and pages from the Bible all over her bed and even had someone come to cleanse the room. Nothing worked. The girl in the sundress kept coming back. On the night she died, her roommate was woken up by a strange sound, a dry, scraping noise like fingernails dragging slowly across a wooden bed frame. The sound was coming from Ashley's bunk. The roommate, terrified, turned on her phone's flashlight and pointed it up. What she saw would be burned in her memory forever. Ashley Thorne was lying flat on her back, eyes wide and lifeless. And on top of her, straddling her chest, was a paper doll, a life-sized effigy with a completely blank face. The paper doll was using its stiff paper hands to strangle the life out of Ashley. The scraping sound was its paper fingernails dragging against the wood. The roommate screamed once and passed out. When she woke up, she was in the campus infirmary. The police had sealed the room, but besides Ashley's body, they found nothing. The faceless effigy was gone. Most of the replies to the post called the roommate a liar, an attention seeker. But Caleb and I knew she was telling the truth. Ellie's revenge was complete. I found Ethan at the cemetery, burning incense at Ellie's grave. He looked skeletal, so thin and pale it seemed a strong gust of wind could blow him over. I told him about Ashley. A faint, relieved smile touched his lips. Good, he whispered. That's good. He was seized by a violent coughing fit, and a spray of blood flecked his hand. My heart sank. Ethan, you? I'm all right, Mr. Blackwood. He waved me off. Just a little tired. I miss my sister. He looked up at me. Thank you. If it wasn't for you, Don't. I cut him off. It's over now. You need to live. Your sister would want you to live. He just smiled, but said nothing. That smile made my blood run cold. I had a terrible feeling that this wasn't over. My premonition came true. Ashley Thorne's parents were wealthy and influential. They refused to accept that their daughter's death was an accident and hired a team of private investigators. It didn't take long for them to uncover the cyberbullying, to find Ellie Vance's name, and to trace it all back to Blackwood Hollow. A black sedan pulled up in front of my workshop. A man in an expensive suit got out, his face a mask of arrogant disdain. He introduced himself as Harrison Thorne, Ashley's father. You're Abel Blackwood? He asked, looking me up and down with contempt. I nodded. My daughter's death is connected to that girl from your town, Ellie Vance. Isn't it? I don't know what you're talking about, I said calmly. Don't play dumb with me. Thorne slammed his hand on my workbench. I've had it all investigated. It was her brother, Ellie Vance. He used some kind of backwoods black magic to murder my daughter. His eyes narrowed. And you're his accomplice. You made the goddamn doll. My heart hammered against my ribs, but I kept my face impassive. You can't just throw accusations around like that. What proof do you have? Proof? Thorne sneered. I don't need proof. I'm here to tell you this isn't over. I'm going to make Ellie Vance and this entire godforsaken town pay for what happened to my daughter. His eyes were filled with a venom that chilled me to the bone. He wasn't bluffing. Men like him, with their money and power, could do anything they wanted. Thorne was true to his word. The next day, a crew of rough-looking men drove into town with an excavator and headed straight for the cemetery, for Ellie's grave. The man in charge was Thorne's nephew, a young punk with bleached hair named Rick. Dig it up, he yelled, pointing at Ellie's headstone. Let's see what this dead bitch can do now. We're going to grind her bones to dust. The townspeople watched in horror, too afraid to intervene. By the time Caleb and I got there, the excavator's massive bucket was already descending. Stop! I ran forward, planting myself in front of the grave. Rick glanced at me and spat on the ground. Get out of the way, old man. Unless you want to join her. This is illegal. You can't do this. Caleb shouted, his face red with rage. Illegal? Rick laughed, as if it were the funniest joke he'd ever heard. Out here, I am a law. Keep digging. Anyone gets in the way, bury them too. The excavator roared to life, its bucket lurching toward us. I stood my ground, shielding the headstone with my body. Ethan arrived then, drawn by the commotion. When he saw what was happening, his eyes went wild. You bastards, he screamed, grabbing a rock and hurling at Rick. It struck the punk on the forehead, drawing blood. Son of a bitch. He hit me. Rick wiped the blood from his face, his expression turning murderous. Get him. Beat him to death. His goons swarmed Ethan. Ethan's body was already weak, and he stood no chance. They beat him to the ground, kicking and punching him as he curled into a ball. Stop it. You're going to kill him. I screamed, trying to get to him, but two men held me back. Caleb was pinned, too. Rick planted his boot on Ethan's head, a cruel grin on his face. You want to play tough, kid? Game over. He pulled a knife from his belt, the blade glinting in the sun. You wanted your sister to get revenge? Well, I'm sending you to go see her. He raised the knife, aiming for Ethan's heart. In that split second, a freakish gust of wind tore through the cemetery. It carried the sound of a woman weeping, a heartbroken, ghostly wail. Everyone froze. From the top of Ellie's grave, the ashes of the burnt effigy and incense began to swirl. They rose into the air, coalescing into the shape of a person in a floral sundress. The shape solidified, taking on Ellie's form. No, not Ellie. It was the effigy. It hovered in the air, and on its featureless face, the two eyes drawn in blood stared directly at Rick. 2 tears of blood trickled down its paper cheeks. 5. Rick and his crew were paralyzed with fear. They'd never seen anything like this. They scrambled backward, falling over each other. A ghost. It's a ghost. Rick was the most terrified of all. The knife fell from his hand as he turned to run. But there was no escape. The paper effigy simply raised one of its hands. An invisible force seized Rick by the throat, lifting him off the ground and into the air. His face turned purple as he clawed at his neck, kicking his legs uselessly. Let me go, he choked out. The effigy ignored him. It tilted its head, its gaze falling upon Ethan, who was lying broken on the ground. Ethan struggled to lift his head. He looked at the hovering figure and smiled. Ellie, I'm here. His voice was barely a whisper. The effigy seemed to hear him. Its blank face seemed to convey a deep sadness. Slowly, it floated over to the excavator, dragging Rick through the air with it. It held him right in front of the machine's heavy steel bucket. Then it let go. Rick fell onto the cold metal with a sickening thud. Before he could even cry out, the hydraulic bucket, moving as if it had a will of its own, slammed shut. There was a sharp, wet crunch, a single, cut-off scream, and then silence. Blood began to drip from the seams of the bucket, pattering onto the dirt below. The remaining goons lost their minds. They fled, screaming, leaving the excavator and everything else behind. The effigy drifted down from the sky, landing softly beside Ethan. It reached out a paper hand and gently stroked his face. The gesture was impossibly tender. I watched, my heart a tangled mess of emotions. I knew this wasn't Ellie's ghost. The ritual of the eyes doesn't summon the dead. It takes the deepest, most powerful obsession of a living person, their blood, and gives it form. The effigy was a vessel for Ethan's will. It did what he desperately wanted to do, but couldn't. It was his rage, his grief, his thirst for justice made manifest. But it came a price. I lifted Ethan into my arms. He was as light as a bundle of sticks, and his breathing was shallow. Mr. Blackwood, he looked at me, his eyes losing focus. Take me home. I nodded, my own eyes burning. Caleb was beside me, sobbing uncontrollably. I carried Ethan home. The effigy followed us, floating silently behind. I laid Ethan down on his bed. The effigy came to a stop beside it, a silent, loyal guardian. His life was fading fast. This was the cost of the ritual. A life for a life. Every act of revenge the effigy carried out had drained Ethan's own life force. Now that the last debt was paid, his time was up. Mr. Blackwood, he gripped my hand, using the last of his strength. Under my bed, there's a box. It has all the proof of what they did to Ellie. Give it to the police. Tears streamed down my face as I nodded. I will, son. I promise. And he turned his gaze to the effigy, his expression full of love. Bury me with Ellie and burn this for me so we can be together and never be apart again. His hand went limp and he was gone. On his face was a small, peaceful smile of release. Beside the bed, the effigy began to glow. It grew transparent, then dissolved into 1,000 points of light that faded into the air. All that was left was a single sheet of white paper, the one with the 2 blood-red eyes, which fluttered down to rest on Ethan's chest. 6. I did as Ethan asked. I found a metal box under his bed. Inside was a flash drive and a thick stack of printed-out screenshots of chats and forum posts. The drive contained everything. All the evidence of Ashley and her friends creating the doctored photos, spreading the rumors, and inciting the mob that tormented Ellie. There was even an audio recording of Ashley admitting she did it all because she was jealous. It was more than enough to put every last one of them who was still alive behind bars. I gave the box to the police. Harrison Thorne was arrested for desecration of a grave and assault with intent to kill. When the detectives showed him the evidence from the box, he completely broke down. He never imagined his daughter could be so cruel. He never imagined his own quest for vengeance would be the very thing that exposed her crimes to the world. The Thorne family's reputation was ruined. Everyone else who had participated in the cyberbullying, whose crimes weren't capital but were still cruel, was identified and faced legal consequences. Ellie Vance's name was finally cleared. I held a joint funeral service for Ethan and Ellie, burying them side by side. I personally took the paper with the blood-red eyes, along with a new pair of effigies I'd made of a brother and sister, and burned them at their grave. As the fire roared, I thought I saw the 2 of them in the flames, a young man and a girl in a sundress, smiling at each other before walking away, hand in hand. Caleb stood beside me. Dad, he asked quietly, did we do the right thing? I was silent for a long time. I don't know, I finally said. I just know that rules are made by people, and sometimes people have to break them. When the law can't give you justice, sometimes you have to find it yourself. I had spent my life as a guardian of the rules, only to break them myself in the end. I had no regrets. If I had to do it all over again, I would make the same choice. I'm an effigy maker. I work with paper, but my real craft is with people, with their grief, their love, and the simple, brutal arithmetic of cause and effect. After that, Blackwood Hollow went back to being Blackwood Hollow. My workshop opened for business every day, just like always. But a new story was added to the town's folklore. A legend about the town's effigy maker, Abel Blackwood, who could walk between the worlds of the living and the dead. They said the dolls he made could right wrongs for the living and speak for the silenced dead. But no one ever came to ask me for one, because everyone knew the old saying, be careful what you wish for, and they knew that the price for one of my special effigies the kind with the painted eyes, was a soul. 7. The days turned into weeks, and the storm that had passed over Blackwood Hollow began to fade into memory. The story of Ethan and Ellie Vance became a town secret, a dark chapter no one spoke of. I was the only one who, along with Caleb, regularly tended to their shared grave. I thought the story was over, buried with them. But one day, a woman I never expected to see walked into my workshop. She was young, dressed in designer clothes, her makeup perfect, but her eyes were wild with a fear that no amount of concealer could hide. The moment she stepped inside, she fell to her knees in front of me. "Mr. Blackwood, please, you have to help me." I frowned and had Caleb help her to a chair. "Who are you? And what do you want from me?" "My name is Jessica Finch," she said, her voice shaking. I was a friend of Ashley Thorne's." A cold stillness settled over me. I watched her without saying a word. Jessica confessed through her tears that her life had been a living hell since Ashley died. She had been part of the cyberbullying campaign. She wasn't a ringleader like Ashley, but she'd posted her share of vicious comments. Now, she was plagued by nightmares. Every night, she dreamed of a faceless paper doll pinning her down, its paper hands wrapped around her neck. She'd spent a fortune on therapists and spiritualists, but nothing worked. Then she heard the whispers about what happened in Blackwood Hollow and came as a last resort. "I know what I did was wrong. I'm so sorry." She pulled a debit card from her purse and shoved it in my hand. "There's over $100,000 in this account. It's all yours. Just please make it stop. I'll do anything." I looked at her, my face a stone mask. "You've come to the wrong place. I'm just a craftsman. I don't deal with ghosts." "No, you can help me." "I know you can," she pleaded, grabbing my arm. "Please. I don't want to die. I don't want to die." I pulled my arm away. "Whether you live or die is no concern of mine," I said, my voice cold. "When you and your friends were tearing an innocent girl apart, did you ever stop to think this day might come? Get out." Jessica's face went ashen. Caleb escorted her out of the workshop. As I watched her stumble away, Caleb looked at me, his brow furrowed. "Dad," she seemed really sorry. "Are we sure we shouldn't help?" I shook my head. "It's not that we won't. It's that we can't. Ethan's will died with him. The effigy is gone. What's haunting her now isn't a paper doll. It's her own guilt. Those who do evil may escape the law, but they can never escape themselves. The most terrifying ghosts are the ones that live inside our own hearts." 8. I thought Jessica Finch was just a loose end. A few days later, the police were back at my door. It was the same lead detective from before, a man named Miller. "Mr. Blackwood," he said, his face grim, "we have another one." My stomach dropped. "A young woman named Jessica Finch is dead," Miller said, his voice heavy. The scene was identical to the Ashley Thorne case. I froze. How could this be? Ethan was dead. The ritual was paid for in full. That effigy couldn't possibly exist anymore. Miller explained that Jessica was found in her luxury high-rise apartment. And, just like before, a faceless paper doll was found lying on top of her body. And just like before, the doll vanished before the forensics team could analyze it. "Mr. Blackwood," Detective Miller's gaze sharpened. "I know you people out here have your beliefs, but I deal in evidence. And the evidence tells us that Jessica Finch came to see you right before she died." I felt a chill go down my spine. He suspected me. I told him everything about Jessica's visit, exactly as it had happened. "So you're saying she was hallucinating out of guilt?" Miller was clearly skeptical. Can a hallucination strangle a person to death? I had no answer. The whole thing was impossible. It went beyond anything I understood. If it wasn't Ethan's effigy, then what was it? Could it be that Ellie's actual ghost had returned? No, that couldn't be right. My family's art channels the will of the living, not the souls of the dead. There had to be something else. Something I was missing. After the detective left, I locked myself in my workshop and tore through my family's old journals, the ones passed down through generations. Finally, in a crumbling, yellowed book, I found it. A single line of faded ink. "Blood of the mother, a bond unbroken. Her pain will not sleep. Her curse is awoken." Reading those words, I felt a cold dread seize me. Her pain will not sleep. Did it mean that as long as a single one of Ellie's tormentors was alive, the curse would never end? But Ethan was gone. Who could possibly be fueling it? A terrible, unthinkable idea began to form in my mind. I bolted out of my workshop and ran to the Vance's old, empty house. It was dark and layered with dust. I went straight to Ethan's room and started tearing it apart. Finally, under a loose floorboard, I found it. A tiny wooden doll, carved to look like a little girl, to look like Ellie. And on its forehead was a small, dark red smudge. Dried blood, but it wasn't Ethan's. It was his mother's. I remembered then, after Ellie died, before the cyberbullying story became public knowledge, her parents, consumed by grief and shame from the local gossip, had walked into Blackwood Creek together and never came out. Before Ethan ever performed his ritual, his mother had already performed her own. She had tied her own life force, her own boundless, grieving love, to her daughter's memory. She had forged a curse. Ethan's revenge was just the beginning. The truly terrifying power came from a mother who had made a pact, sealed in blood, to never rest until her daughter's every last tormentor was punished. As long as a single one of them still breathed, the curse would hunt them. And who was next? I clutched the wooden doll and ran out of the house, my mind racing. Just then, my phone rang. It was Caleb. His voice was choked with terror. "Dad, help me. You have to come help me. I'm at the university, in Ashley Thorne's old dorm building. The effigy. Dad, the paper doll is here. It's come for me." 9. The world tilted. My knees almost gave out. Why Caleb? He had nothing to do with it. He defended Ellie. Why would the curse target him? There was no time to think. I ran, faster than I ever had, flagged down a car on the main road, and screamed at the driver to get me to the state university. I called Caleb's phone over and over, but it just rang and rang. My heart felt like a block of ice in my chest. When I finally got to the dormitory, the whole building was surrounded by police tape. The flashing red and blue lights painted the scene in a sickening rhythm. Detective Miller was there. He saw me, and his face hardened into a mask of grim sympathy. "You're too late, Blackwood." He gestured toward a gurney being wheeled out of the building, a body on it covered by a white sheet. My legs gave out, and I collapsed onto the pavement. No, it can't be. I crawled forward, trying to get to the gurney, to rip that sheet away, but Miller stopped me, holding me firmly. "Don't look," he said, turning his own head away. "It's not your boy." I stared at him, uncomprehending. Her name was Megan Shaw. She was Ashley's other roommate. We have records of her participating in the online harassment, mocking Ellie in the dorm's group chat. A wave of relief, so powerful it made me sick, washed over me, followed instantly by a fresh surge of fear. "Then where's Caleb? Where's my son?" "He's okay," Miller said. "He found the body. He's in shock. We took him to the university hospital." I found Caleb in a hospital bed, curled into a ball, shaking. When he saw me, he burst into tears. "Dad, I saw it. I swear to God, I saw it." Between sobs, he told me what happened. He had been doing some research online, trying to put the pieces together himself, when he discovered that Megan Shaw had been one of the cruelest tormentors. Feeling a mix of guilt and a desperate need to make things right, he had driven to the university to try and convince her to go to Ellie's grave and apologize, hoping it might appease whatever spirit was at work. He'd heard a scream from inside her room. He kicked the door in and saw it. The faceless paper doll, pinning Megan to her bed. The doll had turned its blank head to look at him, and it had reached out a paper hand. In that instant, a small charm Caleb wore around his neck burst into a brilliant flash of golden light. The effigy shrieked, a sound like tearing paper and dry leaves burning, and dissolved into a wisp of smoke. Caleb had been saved. I ripped his shirt collar open. There, hanging on a leather cord, was a small, carved piece of hickory wood. I made it for him on his 18th birthday, blessed with the old family ways to ward off evil. I never imagined it would one day save his life. I pulled him into a fierce hug, my own body trembling with residual fear. "Dad, what is that thing?" Caleb asked, his voice muffled against my shoulder. I thought with Ethan gone. I told him about the wooden doll, about the mother's curse. His face went even paler. "Then what do we do? It's never going to stop, is it?" He was right. It wouldn't stop. As long as there was a single tormentor left, this curse, born from a mother's bottomless love and rage, would hunt them down like a predator. But how could we stop it? The internet provided a cloak of anonymity. The people who had typed those hateful words were scattered across the country, maybe the world. We could never find them all. Were we doomed to just stand by and watch this massacre continue indefinitely? I had never felt so helpless in my entire life. 10. Just when I thought all hope was lost, Detective Miller returned. He brought something I never expected. Our cybercrimes unit managed to recover data from the phones of Ashley Thorne and Jessica Finch, he said, his expression serious. They were part of a private group chat. He handed me a printed list. Everyone in this group was a core member of the campaign against Ellie Vance. Megan Shaw's name is on here, too. I looked at the list. There were dozens of names and usernames. My hands began to shake. These were them. All of them. We've already opened a federal case against every person on this list, Miller said. But digital forensics takes time, and these people are all over the country. Rounding them up will be a process. He looked me straight in the eye, his gaze unwavering. I'm here today off the record. As a man, not a cop. And I'm asking for your help. Mr. Blackwood, I know you have your ways. I don't care if it's magic or folklore or something else entirely. All I'm asking is that you find a way to keep them alive long enough for us to arrest them. They deserve to be punished, he said, his voice low and intense. But they don't deserve to die like this. Justice has to come from a courtroom, not from whatever this is. I stared at him, a man of logic and law, begging me, a maker of paper dolls, to intervene in the affairs of the supernatural. The irony was staggering, but I understood what he was asking. There's a line between vengeance and justice. Finally, I gave a single, slow nod. I'll do what I can. After Miller left, I took the list and went back to my workshop. I locked the door and did not emerge for 3 days and 3 nights. When I finally came out, I was holding a new effigy. It wasn't of Ellie, and it wasn't of Ethan. It was of their mother, the woman I had never met, whose love was so strong it had bent the rules of life and death. I did not paint eyes on this effigy. Instead, over its heart, I drew a calming symbol in sacred ink, an ancient sigil of peace. Then, I took Caleb, the new effigy, and the small wooden blood doll, and we went to the cemetery. I lit 3 sticks of incense and bowed respectfully before the shared grave of Ethan and Ellie Vance. Mrs. Vance, I said to the headstone, my voice clear and steady. My name is Abel Blackwood, the effigy maker of this town. I know your heart is broken and your anger is just. I understand it. But revenge only creates more sorrow. The ones who truly harmed your daughter have paid the price. The law will handle the rest. They will have their justice. Your blood, your love. It was meant to protect, not to destroy. It's time to let go. Please, I finished. Rest now. I took the small wooden doll and gently placed it in the arms of the mother effigy. Then, I lit the paper figure. As the flames consumed the mother and child, I heard a sound on the wind. It was a long, soft sigh, a sound of grief, of reluctance, but ultimately of release. I knew then that the curse was broken. That great and terrible mother's love had finally found its peace. Over the next month, news reports trickled in. Working from a list, Detective Miller and law enforcement agencies across the country arrested every last person from the group chat. They would all face the judgment of the law. The tragedy born from a hateful online mob and the cycle of vengeance it unleashed was finally over. Blackwood Hollow returned to its quiet rhythms. But my workshop has a new rule now. Anyone who asks me to make an effigy, for any reason, must perform one final act before it is burned. They must speak to it, out loud, and say these words, ashes to ashes, dust to dust. What is past is paid for. People ask me why. I just smile and don't answer. Because I'm the only one who knows that some doors, once opened, can never truly be closed again. As an effigy maker, I was once a guardian of the old rules. Then, I became a breaker of them. Now I understand. My work is not just about shaping paper. It's about honoring memory, respecting consequences, and holding, in my own 2 hands, the last fragile thread of mercy this world has to offer.